Dog nurses the orphan kittens, and then something terrible happens. The two tiny kittens opened their eyes just today. Everything around them was blurry, but it looked so interesting that they couldn't sit still. They crawled to different directions, and the cat had to constantly retrieve one or the other with her teeth. At last, the cubs became tired and greedily drank their mother's milk and then fell asleep. The cat ran out of the yard and rushed across the road in search of food. When a car roared nearby, the cat jerked to the side, but the car swerved there as well. Passers-by heard a crunch, and a red tread track was left on the pavement. The kittens woke up a long time ago, but didn't find their mom nearby. At first they were delighted, because no one would hold them in place. The kittens crawled out of their cozy nest of fallen leaves and into a small clearing. The large open space frightened the animals. They wanted to go back, but couldn't remember the way, so they called out loudly for their mom. The kittens huddled together and shook with fear. They were tired after their long journey, hungry and wanting to sleep, but their mother was still missing. No one can say how long the kittens had been alone. It seems to them as if it had been an eternity. The kittens were moving faintly. Their strength was rapidly fading, and their hope for a miracle was getting smaller and smaller. Sally didn't frequent the yard. The locals weren't very friendly. They didn't feed her and could even scold her. The dog lived behind the garages in the next yard and tried to avoid the unfriendly area. But today, it was as if something had prompted it to come there. Sally smelled the cats. It wasn't that she hated them, but a couple of times, particularly aggressive ones had scratched the dog's nose, so she tried to stay away from them. The animal was about to run away when her ears picked up a cry of anguish. Sally was alarmed, then heard a low, pitying meow again. The dog came closer and saw two tiny kittens in the tall grass. The babies were huddled together and crying softly, their strength no longer sufficient to move. Sally froze at her observation post. The children were clearly calling for their mother. But the minutes inexorably turned into hours, and the mother of the little ones didn't appear. The kittens had already stopped crying. They lay there twitching slightly, waiting for the logical end of their short life. Finally, the dog couldn't take it anymore. She felt so sorry for the little ones that their belonging to the feline lineage became irrelevant. Sally walked over to the babies, nipped at them with her wet nose, and lay down next to them. The kittens squirmed to feel the warmth, moving closer, and suddenly smelled the most delicious scent in the world, the scent of fresh milk. The kittens greedily jumped on the food, not worrying that it didn't smell like their mother. The dog just covered their eyes and made herself comfortable. She had given birth to puppies only a month ago, so there was still plenty of milk. Her children were so cute and fluffy that people would adore looking at them. Sally was lucky with her neighbors. Someone brought a big box, someone a warm, soft coat, and now the family was living in a house of their own. The dog was fed and watered regularly. The tail-haired mother was feasting. Because she didn't have to run around looking for food, she spent all her time around the children, licking them, keeping them warm and feeding them. Sally happily watched her little ones grow and get stronger, helping them take their first steps, taught them to play, and showed them the passages between the houses. She was happy. As soon as the puppies were a month old, people started picking them up. The first to come was an elderly man who lived in a house nearby. He had also been feeding the animal, and now he wanted to take the biggest little one to guard his property. Sally didn't want to part with the little ones, but she was well aware that it's better to live with an owner. Sometimes Sally wanted to have a home too, but no one was interested in an adult dog from the street. She looked wistfully at her contented pets, spending her winters on the cold asphalt under the porch. The second puppy was taken in by a family with a little girl. The little girl was so happy with the pet that Sally was reassured that her baby would be well looked after there. The third puppy was taken away by car to a nearby suburb. The dog was left with the last baby. He differed from his brothers and sisters in his small size, unassuming gray hair, and disheveled hair near his muzzle. People would cringe when they saw him, calling him ugly, though Sally thought he was the most beautiful creature in the world. As time went on, no one came to fetch the baby. People lost interest in the canine family and stopped bringing food. Soon, Sally had to go in search of food again. The puppy proved to be uncommonly restless and chased after his mother. Sometimes these trips were successful, sometimes not so much. One day, Sally ran off into the neighbor's yard while the puppy was still asleep, and when she returned, her baby was gone. The dog followed its trail and was all cold with terror. The puppy had wandered into the territory of a pack of large dogs. Sally herself was careful not to approach the strangers, knowing they had a tough temper. But fear was unknown to the cub, and he stole a piece of the packmaster's bread. The whole pack pounced on the pup and clawed at his paws. When Sally arrived, there was a metallic smell in the air and flew wisps of familiar fur. The pack immediately turned their attention to the dog, so she had to run away quickly. Sally had lain in her kennel for several days, breathing in the weathered smell of her baby. And then this morning, it was as if something had made her walk, and there she found the abandoned kittens. The dog carefully sniffed the babies and was surprised to realize that the cat's scent was old, meaning that the mother hadn't visited her babies for a long time. Sally nosed the kittens closer to her belly and decided to feed the orphans. The fed kittens quickly fell into a nap, basking near the dog, and weren't about to crawl away. But Sally couldn't stay still for long. She was well aware that the inhabitants of the yard would chase her away at their first opportunity. It was a miracle that she hadn't been spotted yet, so the dog cautiously got up, picked one of the kittens up with her teeth, and ran into the backyard. She carried the kitten without adventure to her cardboard shelter, settling it on the soft bedding. As Sally ran up to get the second one, she realized there was going to be trouble. Two female neighbors stopped in the yard and began complaining loudly about life. The dog cautiously sidestepped the women, but they spotted her anyway and began to angrily chase her away. Sally gently picked up the kitten with her mouth and turned towards the people. The women saw the baby in the dog's teeth, and their eyes widened with horror, and they shouted across the yard that a rabid dog was eating innocent kittens. One of the ladies grabbed a large stone from the ground and threw it at Sally with all her might. The animal miraculously dodged it and raced away to its cardboard fortress. Sticks and stones were thrown at her, curses and scolding were heard across the street, but the dog wasn't interested. Sally hurriedly ran to her box, crawled into it, and gasped heavily. The kittens woke up and immediately began exploring the unfamiliar territory. It turned out that their foster mom was so warm and big that the little ones wouldn't come off her. Meanwhile, in a neighboring yard, two eyewitnesses were telling everyone about the bloodthirsty dog. Not all the neighbors believed them, so they had to find convincing arguments for everyone. The old people were told that the animal would bite their legs. The young people were convinced that the animal would attack the children and bite their throats. Everyone was horrified and decided to get rid of the animal themselves. The men armed themselves with shovels and went together in a crowd to a neighboring yard in search of Sally. The dog heard the noise long before the people could be seen, but didn't run. The animal didn't even think they were coming for her. The cardboard walls of the box gave the illusion of security, so Sally stayed where she was. She began licking the kittens until they were interested in milk again. People in the crowd were shouting and arguing and completely unable to hear each other. Finally, one of the rampaging crowd reached into the dog's box and threw aside a piece of cloth covering the lodge on top. Sally looked up at the frozen man. He had a crowbar in his hand, which alarmed the dog. But instead of growling, the animal tried to cover the head of the kittens, who were greedily drinking milk. The man put down the crowbar and walked away. Behind him, the rest of the people piled in with curiosity at the unusual sight. People began to disperse, laughing now and then at the panic mongers. Sally was fed again. The dog was able to stay close to the kittens all the time, feeding and licking them. The babies, thanks to Sally's care, quickly got stronger and grew into round buns, and the dog rejoiced at their successes as if they were her own puppies. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tap on that bell icon to stay connected. Until next time, take care of yourself.